at the same time demands that we reimagine our collective fight against corruption with the energy, innovation, and commitment of our young people. I should note, though, that I do not see many young people in here. So that worries me. But I hope those of us present are young at heart. As I stand before you today, as a representative of the Prosecutor General of Zimbabwe, I'm reminded of a simple but profound truth that corruption is not just a crime. It is an insidious force that gnaws at the very fabric of our society. It robs our nation of its wealth, it stifles development, and perhaps more tragically, it steals from the dreams and aspirations of the youth. Yet, in a grave paradox, it is this very generation of youth that holds the antidote to the social ill. Zimbabwe, like many nations, has not been immune to the scourge of corruption. The daily newspaper headlines, the whispers, and the repercussions have all too often served as grim reminders of the challenges that we face. But let us be clear, today is not about lamentation, it is about action. It is about recognizing that in the youth of this country, we have a force not just to be reckoned with, but to be relied upon. The audacity to question, the ingenuity to innovate, and the impatience with the status quo are exactly what we need to root out corruption and replace it with a culture of accountability and transparency. At the National Prosecuting Authority of Zimbabwe, we are committed to ensuring that our justice system is a fortress against corruption. We are committed that this be the position not just for today, but for generations to come. Our prosecution stands not merely as being about punishment, but they are about setting examples. We believe that there should be a clarion call to all that the rule of law will not waver, and that corruption, no matter how entrenched, will be met with the full force of justice. However, I stand here to remind all that justice is a collaborative enterprise. We are all a team, and we should all be reminded that we will only be as strong as the weakest team members. Let us all strive thus to match the next player's eagerness and energy in the fight against corruption. We remind all that this requires vigilance, courage, unity, qualities that I strongly believe should be abundant now. To the young people, both those here present, which I have mentioned are a few, and those absent, let me say this. The fight against corruption begins with you. It begins with the refusal to normalize the abnormal. It begins with the insistence on accountability in all our communities, our schools, workplace, and even our homes. And it begins with the ability to leverage technology, even from social media platforms to blockchain systems that will then expose wrongdoing and demand transparency. Yet, even as we call upon the youth, let us as leaders and senior citizens not absolve ourselves of responsibility. What becomes the point of inspiring the youth if we, their mentors, are the architects of the systems they must dismantle? Integrity is not inherited, it is modeled. We must also recognize that the fight against corruption cannot be won by the NPA or the justice system and youth movements alone. It requires a multi-sectoral approach. Educators must teach the value of ethics from an early age. Civil society must act as a watchdog. Business must embrace and enforce principles of good corporate governance. And then we, as public servants, must enforce principles and ensure that our institutions remain above reproach. In this fight against corruption, I have to remind all of us that there will be no bystanders. We should all be participants. Ladies and gentlemen, the theme of this year's commemoration urges us to think of the future. But let us acknowledge that the seeds of tomorrow's integrity must and will be planted today. It is integral, I believe, that I should leave you with this question. What legacy do you want to leave? What kind of Zimbabwe do you want to share? Will it be a nation crippled by the weight of its own corruption, or one propelled forward by the honesty, ingenuity, and determination of its youth? To the youth, before I sit, I say, we are not merely the leaders of tomorrow, we are the change makers of today. To all of us implicit, let us unite, let us act, and let us ensure that when the history of this era is written, it will not be seen as an era. It will speak of a Zimbabwe that at some stage refused to be broken by corruption and instead chose the harder but noble path of integrity. As I speak on behalf of the prosecutor of Zimbabwe, I remind everyone, each and all of us, that it is the task of the National Prosecution Authority of Zimbabwe to prosecute without fear and no offense. And that we take that responsibility seriously. But the seriousness and effectiveness of our operations will only be measured by those who also choose to take the noble path in this fight against corruption. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chirambere. Another round of applause, please. So, ladies and gentlemen, this activity would not have been possible without the support of development partners. Commemoration is comprised of this conference that we're having here at the Holiday Inn. Also, in the afternoon, there's going to be a roadshow at the suburbs of Harare. So, at this juncture, please allow me to just acknowledge present in the room from the US Embassy, Mr. Perry Brian. From USA, we've got Mr. Mido Banzi and Timothy Salary from the DG officials. Thank you so much for coming and be with us today. From the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, the FCTO, we've got Mr. Nikolai Hutchinson. Sincere thanks for coming through. From the EU, we've got Mr. V. Arrow. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Sincere thanks for coming through. From the DAI, we've got Mr. James Mozondija. And we've also invited colleagues from the embassies of Sweden, Canada, and France. Thank you so much for your support in all the work that we do in building networks of accountability, including this very important occasion. Now, ladies and gentlemen, to move the program to the next section, as civil society organizations, we operate as knowledge-based institutions. We insist on basing all our advocacy on research. So we want to take this moment of this commemoration to share with you various pieces of research themes on the youth and corruption. We believe that these are important if we are going to craft meaningful and inclusive anti-corruption strategies. The movement against corruption, policymakers, and strategists in Zimbabwe are keen to harness the unique abilities of the youth in the fight against corruption. So what we do as a society, we examine what is happening in various sectors. And fortunately for you today, we have a piece of research we want to share as Transparency International, which brings up the theme of the impacts of corruption on the youth. With the assistance of the Embassy of Sweden, we carried out a research on corruption in the higher and tertiary education sector in Zimbabwe. So we want to share with you via video the findings by way of summary. So please play that for us. Thank you very much. So with the sound engineer also ramp up the volume, please. Is it helpful if I put it in mic?
Corruption in the higher and tertiary education sector.
So could the sound engineer assist us, please? So while they're getting the sound sorted, maybe I can just speak to the background of the research so that you understand the context. So as Transparency International Zimbabwe, we do a lot of outreach in communities and various sectors and institutions around the country to understand what is happening on the ground. We've got at community level what we call accountability monitoring committees, and these are grassroots-led committees that monitor what's happening in the community and report to us various challenges with corruption. And so we use these kind of engagements to decide what sectors we're going to do research on and what topics. So a couple of years ago, the topic of the education sector really came up. The education sector is quite vast in this country. It's divided into two: the primary and secondary education sector with its own ministry and legislative framework, but we've also got the higher tertiary education sector. So we did research on these sectors in phases. So what we want to present to you today, if we can get the sound right, is the findings of the research on the higher tertiary education sector. You will be able to leave the room with your own copy, but I thought on this occasion it's better for us to summarize it in video. So I beg your indulgences. I was saying sound engineer fixes the problem, but we also have our lead researcher who assisted us on the research, Dr. Malinga. If you can just stand up and take a bow. We will be with Dr. Malinga later on in a panel to discuss some of the findings. Thank you so much. You can get a signal if it's sorted. Let me just consult the sound engineer so that we decide we can move the program along. This one. Is it? In the interest of time, Dr. Malinga, let me put you on the spot. Maybe you can come up and summarize for us the findings of the research.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much, Mr. Matanga, and also for putting me on the spotlight. I did not expect or anticipate that. But anyway, I'll try to summarize some of the findings from the research that was conducted with regard to the prevalence of corruption in the higher and tertiary education sector. So we conducted this research in 2022, and it spanned through the month of October. And in terms of the methodology, we used the mixed methods approach, where we so in terms of the methodology, we used the mixed methods approach, where we used both the qualitative and quantitative tools. And in relation to our quantitative tool, we managed to ensure that we were able to share it with various respondents that ranged from academics, students, parents as well. And then in terms of the qualitative tool, we were able to identify a number of key informants that also spanned across a number of stakeholders that are involved in the higher and tertiary. For our surveys, we were able to reach out to around 364 respondents using the online platform. And so part of the findings is that there was a consensus, especially amongst the majority of respondents, on the fact that corruption was a serious problem in the higher and tertiary education sector. So a significant proportion did really indicate that corruption was a serious problem. And at the same time, we also did identify some of the several forms of corruption, and we tried to categorize them in terms of which one comes out first as being problematic within the sector. And what came out on top was that sextortion was really a serious problem within these institutions, with around 53.3% of the respondents actually identifying that form of corruption as being an endemic. And then it was followed by academic fraud. Around 48.6% of the respondents actually indicated that. And within the sphere or component of academic fraud, the respondents were highlighting different characteristics such as fake degrees or qualifications, the awarding of marks not based on one's capability, but based on issues to do with extortion. And so really, it's a major problem within the sector. And then in terms of the academic level, a majority of our respondents cited that the teaching and the learning has really declined over the years, especially within the sector, given the numerous challenges that are currently taking place. And at the end of the day, even as we were also discussing with some of the respondents using the interview system, they highlighted that at the end of the day, what we currently have are half-baked graduates. Those who are not able to get into the job market and become effective is because of the current corruption that is currently taking place at that particular level. And also we decided in the study to also try to look at the various processes that take place within the HT institutions, from admissions to regulatory level to institutional management. And from our findings, it was very evident that corruption was high or rampant in institutional management and also in various academic divisions. This was some of the responses that we got from the research, that at institutional management level, we tend to see a number of corrupt activities, such as bribery taking place, procurement irregularities, and then at academic level, we are seeing that from the admissions process, it tends to be a bit difficult for students um, who do not come from privileged backgrounds to actually get an opportunity to get into academia. And then again, what we also found out is that at institutional management, we also identified some forms of corruption apart from the ones that I've mentioned, such as embezzlement. We also have corruption, which is high, especially when it comes to the allocation of accommodation for students. There is also nepotism in the recruitment of staff. And so, especially in the recruitment of staff, we had a major challenge where some respondents actually told us that the recruitment of staff in some of these institutions is no longer based on one's qualification, but it's now based on who do you know. And so this really becomes a major challenge, especially given that in these institutions, the basis on one's recruitment is based on their skill. It's really not based on I am the uncle or the cousin of who. So this is quite a major challenge. And because of the poor recruitment of staff, even the teaching and learning is also hugely impacted. And so this was really a major concern within the sector. And then we also looked at what are some of the several factors or drivers of corruption. Remember, corruption is also driven by certain factors, why it takes place within these institutions. At the apex or at the top, in terms of being a driving force, we found in the study that it was greed or financial gain, where people who are employed or associated within the sector, they want to gain financially. So that is why they end up engaging in corrupt activities. This was also followed by poor remuneration, where some individuals who are involved within the sector, they are driven to engage in corrupt activities because of poor remuneration. And so these are just some of the key issues. But however, in our analysis, we also decided to point to the fact that in as much as we talk about corruption within the sector, but we should also talk about it from a broader perspective, given the current challenges economically and socially, where there are certain individuals who are inclined in terms of the quest for power, and also some individuals are interfering, especially in the running of these institutions. And hence, this is also is now a breeding ground, especially for corrupt activities. We really did use a number of approaches or theories, if I can put it that way, in terms of trying to really identify corruption within the education sector in the context of Zimbabwe. And then we also asked our respondents whether did they have some form of understanding, especially in relation to their knowledge of institutions and how they are also mandated to address corruption in Zimbabwe. And from our survey, 41.8% of the respondents indicated that they had good knowledge of public anti-corruption institutions. However, it is also important to highlight that some of the respondents, I think 51.9%, indicated that the institutions in this particular sector are equipped and also ready to deal with education corruption. But however, the research also tried to compare. Remember, at the end of the day, when you use a mixed methods approach, you want to corroborate the information. The one that you collected quantitatively, you also want to find out an explanation in terms of some of these figures. But then also in our research, we had different opinions or views that really contradicted what we found from the quantitative. In as much as the quantitative said the institutions are ready, but in the qualitative, the majority of the respondents indicated that they are not even well aware of such instruments to begin with. And secondly, the institutions themselves have not played a major role in ensuring that such instruments are put out there for every stakeholder who is involved within these different institutions. So it's quite important at the end of the day to also realize that, yes, in as much as the institutions are well aware of these processes, but the implementation part is still a major challenge, especially in terms of enforcing these anti-corruption instruments, if I can put it that way. And then the research also tried to try and gauge the level of awareness, especially in relation to the National Anti-Corruption Strategy, which is coming to an end this year in 2024. And from our findings, we found out that 38.7% indicated that these institutions actually had good knowledge of the National Anti-Corruption Strategy, which still falls below, given that it's only 38%. So it means around 62% are not well or do not have good knowledge of the anti-corruption strategy. So still a major gap there in relation to that kind of information being put out there to these institutions, so that at least they can be able to implement national anti-corruption strategies. And also it was really concerning, given that because of this limited knowledge, you would find out that across the number of respondents that were from academia to stakeholders who are involved within the sector, part of the major challenges is that there is a need for institutions to establish offices that are actually able to mandate and also deal with these major challenges that are related to corruption. But our overall main aim of the study was that, in as much as we are looking at these different drivers, looking at the characteristics of different forms of corruption, we also delved deeper to understand some of the impacts of this corruption, especially on different groups, such as women, such as the youth, such as people who come from poor backgrounds, people with disabilities. We also wanted to really find out what kind of impact are they confronted with, especially in relation to corruption. From our findings, we found out that these groups are really disproportionately affected, especially by corruption. And at the apex, we found out that there are really several types of corruption that are affecting these different groups that are at risk of discrimination. And at the top is sextortion, where women or young girls or young women are actually affected in relation to the higher tertiary education. We've also got other forms such as blackmail, and then we've also got other economic forms of corruption that take place, such as extortion and also embezzlement. But in all of this, I was asked a particular question. Please forgive me for what I'm about to say. Yes, academics did point out, especially when we had a session with some academics, who were saying that, yes, we have pointed out sextortion, but isn't the pendulum also swinging the other way, where students are actually the perpetrators of corruption, especially sextortion? So this is where you get to be stuck in between, in terms of trying to understand that the pendulum also swings to the other direction. Apart from sextortion, students are also managed to an extent that they want to buy their way out of these institutions in terms of getting qualifications. So really, we still need to delve deeper into this kind of research, where we want to understand, in as much as we are talking about institutions themselves, but let's also talk about stakeholders also playing a part, especially in terms of perpetuating some of these corrupt activities within the institutions. But we also provided a number of recommendations. I think you're going to read them through the report that is going to be shared by Mr. Mataka from TIZ. But I think for now, this is just a summary of the research findings from this particular research that we carried out on corruption in the higher tertiary education settings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Malika, for stepping in. The topic will be taken further on after tea. We've got a panel discussion which touches on some of the aspects of the research. particularly those that highlight the impacts of corruption on the youth. But at this juncture, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to invite you to tea. We'll take 30 minutes to have our tea, then reconvene and continue with our program. Thank you very much.
on the subject and captured the opinions of stakeholders who are involved directly or indirectly in higher and tertiary education across the country. These included policymakers, bureaucrats, employees of higher education institutions, learners, representatives of businesses, non-profits, and the media. The literature review identified various forms of corruption relevant to this sector, such as academic fraud through exam leaks, awarding fake degrees, blackmail and extortion, where teaching staff imposed charges for supplementary tutoring, bribery in admissions and examinations, plagiarism through the deliberate falsification, misstatement, and alternation of evidence of data. Other forms of corruption include nepotism in the recruitment of staff, unqualified admissions, embezzlement, or the general misappropriation of sector institutional funds, procurement irregularities, malpractices, such as improper awarding of tenders, favoritism, patronage, and political corruption. For example, favoritism in recruiting staff and grant corruption involving the misuse of manpower development resources. Sextortion, where victims are forced to offer sexual favors for enrollment or grades. This literature review informs the design of the survey questionnaire, which reached 364 respondents from all 10 provinces of Zimbabwe through face-to-face interviews and online platforms. Combined with the documentary analysis, the survey research indicates that 41.8% of respondents expressed good knowledge when asked to rate their levels of knowledge on the prevalence of corruption in Zimbabwe. In describing the problem of corruption in the higher and tertiary education sector, a considerable proportion, 40.9%, described it as a serious problem. Participants likened corruption in the sector as being a small-scale representation of the national situation with corruption, described as widespread in its severity. Several forms of corruption were identified in the online survey, with sextortion 53.3 and academic fraud 48.6 being the most common forms in the sector. The academic level of teaching and learning, identified by a majority of 42.6% in the online survey, was cited as the most vulnerable to corruption risk in the sector when compared to the policy and regulatory level and institutional management level. In the qualitative findings, procurement malpractice as the most prominent form of corruption in institutional management, coupled with embezzlement, corrupt allocation of accommodation in student welfare, and nepotism in the recruitment of staff. Meanwhile, the academic level was afflicted with sextortion in the interaction between teaching staff and learners, with learners alleged to be initiating this type of corruption sometimes. Several causal factors or drivers of corruption were identified throughout the higher and tertiary education chain, where opportunities presented themselves for individuals to abuse their position of influence. At the top of the online survey was greed or financial gain, 17.8%, followed by poor remuneration, 17.5%. Academic pressure such as fear of failure, as well as poor study habits and laziness, were also found to be impacting on learners themselves, leading to their involvement in academic forms of corruption. The majority of survey respondents, 41.8%, expressed good knowledge of public anti-corruption institutions. Most online surveys, 51.9%, also indicated that institutions of the higher tertiary education sector are equipped or ready to deal with education corruption. There were, however, mixed findings on the perceived levels of knowledge within the higher and tertiary education institutions regarding the national anti-corruption strategy. This indicates that low or uneven levels of awareness of the NACS may contribute to the prevalence of corruption in the sector. As regards impact, it is clear from the quantitative responses in the online survey that some segments of society are impacted by educational corruption, based on their demographic characteristics or level of vulnerability. For example, Zimbabwe is a youthful country with approximately 67% of the population being under the age of 35. Young people make up the most sizable chunk of their communities, making them more exposed to some forms of corruption. Young people also constitute the majority of students in higher education institutions, making them more likely to be impacted by various forms of education corruption. Sustained exposure to a culture of corruption means youth end up becoming products of corruption with no sense of value and integrity. They simply get captured in the process of corruption that is deemed proper in order to get things done or have things go your way. Ethics such as hard work, integrity, commitment, and other important values are thereby eroded within young people as they reach maturity and enter the workforce. As a result, the youths are more likely to believe in the approach of taking shortcuts to survive or get opportunities. As regards gender forms of corruption, specific types of corruption, such as sextortion, impact females the most. Youth have limited financial resources and are highly likely to pay in kind as an alternative. Blackmail. Linked to bribe taking by individuals in positions of authority, and embezzlement robs people with disabilities of the amenities to enjoy education at par with the able-bodied. At a border level, there are serious implications when the products coming out of higher and tertiary education institutions are perceived to be half-baked, when corruption diverts resources which should otherwise be used for providing world-class education. The knock-on effects are then felt in lower levels of productivity and quality of work in the various sectors in which these youths are employed. Corruption also impacts public confidence in the sector if left unchecked. The study makes several recommendations in line with the findings, and these are just a few of them, demonstrating the range of practical actions which stakeholders can champion to curb corruption in the higher and tertiary education sector. For example, Parliament is urged to pass the Protected Disclosure Whistleblower Protection Bill and Witness Protection Bill to protect people reporting for campaigning against corruption within higher education institutions. In addition, there is the need to pass standalone national legislation that criminalizes sextortion to curb the practice in higher education institutions. Linked to this, the Zimbabwe Gender Commission is encouraged to recognize sextortion as a specific form of abuse lying at the intersection of anti-corruption and gender-based violence. The Commission should regularly investigate, report, and recommend any acts of sextortion for prosecution in line with the provisions of the Constitution of Zimbabwe. The Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education, Science and Technology Development is encouraged to explore innovative ways of financing the construction of adequate student accommodation and related amenities at state-owned institutions to reduce bribe-taking behavior by administrative staff. The ministry should also promote the adoption of enterprise resource planning systems or integrated software systems and online platforms in the day-to-day running of higher education institutions to reduce human interference in various processes such as enrollment and staff recruitment, which are reported to have an elevated risk of corruption. Acknowledging the significant progress made towards the adoption of electronic government procurement, EGP, or e-procurement, the government must expedite the finalization of all stages of full electronic government procurement to reduce the levels of human interference in the procurement process in state-owned higher education institutions and related departments. It is recommended that the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development and Investment Promotion sufficiently finance the construction of adequate and inclusive student accommodation and related amenities at state-owned learning institutions to reduce bribe behavior by administrative staff over scarce funds. The Parliament of Zimbabwe is encouraged to scrutinize the higher tertiary education sector to track the occurrence of the diverse forms of corruption. This includes working closely with the Office of Auditor General to scrutinize expenditures towards the sector to ensure that resources are not diverted away from the provision of equitable and quality education due to acts of corruption. They are also encouraged to support adequate budgets towards student amenities in state-owned higher education institutions to curb bribe-taking behavior caused by inadequate infrastructure. The Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission is encouraged to conduct regular spot checks in the sector through secure platforms and support the implementation of anti-corruption programs through the Integrity Committee established in various institutions. Higher education institutions are encouraged to promote a culture of open dialogue with all internal stakeholders in the day-to-day running of institutions to curb corrupt acts and develop inclusive anti-corruption policies that factor in the needs of vulnerable groups impacted by various forms of corruption. In line with the objective of Article 13 of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, all higher education institutions should mainstream ethics and anti-corruption in the curriculum. Overall, corruption in the higher tertiary education sector in Zimbabwe mirrors problems that are currently prevailing in the wider society that has been experiencing severe waves of corruption fueled by unfavorable economic and social conditions. As the 2024 Anti-Corruption Day is themed on the youth, this report provides an opportunity to reflect on the role of young people in curbing corruption for sustainable development. All concerned stakeholders are encouraged to collaborate under the National Anti-Corruption Strategy and relate policy frameworks on an ongoing basis to grow networks of integrity within the higher and tertiary education sectors. Show your support for this by promoting the banner #Education Integrity Zimbabwe.
Thank you very much for your attention, ladies and gentlemen. And once again, sincere apologies for the glitch with the sound earlier on. So, having looked at the research evidence on the higher and tertiary education sector, there have been some initiatives underway to promote networks of integrity in that sector. I'm referring to the rollout of integrity committees, which have been promoted in various institutions under the umbrella of SAG. In order to tell us a bit about how we are faring in the rollout of these programs in the higher and tertiary education sector, I would like to invite a representative of ZAG to present to us very briefly what we have achieved so far, and in the context of our theme, how can we contribute towards alleviating the impacts of corruption on the youth in the higher and tertiary education sector. So I'm handing the floor over to ZAG. We had a speaker on integrity committees. Please, let's give him some applause as he walks up to the podium and sets up his presentation.
Thank you very much. Allow me to write on the protocol already observed. My name is Tafrenika Marigire. I'm the manager, compliance and systems and process review. I'm going to present on a case study on the higher and tertiary education initiatives on integrity in the education sector. My presentation is going to focus on what actually informed the need for integrity in the higher and tertiary education sectors. I'm also going to highlight the issues that we picked that requires integrity to be promoted in the sector. I also going to present briefly on the introduction and background regarding ZAC, its mandate and its functions, and the benefits of integrity to youth and the institutions within the higher and tertiary education, and also to highlight challenges linked to the lack of integrity and any integrity initiatives in the sector, and also building the integrity framework within the higher and tertiary education sector. So the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission is mandated by Section 255 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, Amendment number 20, the Act of 2013, to take the lead in the fight against all forms of corruption, and is mission to spearhead the development of citizens and institutions that uphold integrity in order to achieve a corrupt-free Zimbabwe. The United Nations Convention Against Corruption, the Article 5.2, stipulates that each state party shall endeavor to establish and promote effective practices aimed at the prevention of corruption and the promotion of integrity, among other values, and Zimbabwe is a signatory to this convention. In line with UNCAC requirements, Zimbabwe is currently implementing the National Anti-Corruption Strategy that was launched by His Excellency President Dr. E.G. Mnangagwa on July 11, 2020. And it is against this background that ZAC, through the Prevention of Corruption Department, is establishing the integrity committees and administering the signing of the integrity pledges as proactive measures for prevention of corruption, to promote and uphold integrity in individual, institutional, organizational, and national level. As functions of ZAC, among others, is to combat corruption, theft, misappropriation, abuse of power, and other improprieties in the public and private sectors. To promote honesty, financial discipline, and transparency, to monitor and examine the practices, systems, and procurement procedures of public and private institutions, to instruct, advise, and assist any officer, agents, or institutions in the elimination or minimization of corruption, and to assist in the formulation of practices, systems, and procurement procedures of public and private institutions with a view to the elimination of corruption practices. So, background to the need for integrity in higher and tertiary education. I would like also to agree with the presentation on the research findings that there is indeed corruption in the higher and tertiary education sector. What it means is, as corruption is affecting other sectors, and higher and tertiary education is also not left behind. There are also issues of concern that are exhibiting themselves within the sector. And to mention a few, and also from the media, what we read in the media, pertaining what is happening in some in the sector. We also raised the issue of substitution as an issue, bribery for one to acquire and deserved qualifications. The examples which I'm going to use are actually examples. Some of them which we read in the media, and some of them which we have interacted with them in relation to compliance and system reviews which have been carried out in those institutions, the pertaining issues which have been raised in the institutions within that sector. Also, abuse of office, issues of plagiarism, issues of lack of transparency in recruitment and selection of employees and students. Talk about admissions of students in institutions of learning. Then inadequate governance, referring to weak internal controls, inadequate policies, lack of accountability, insufficient oversight, and ineffective leadership, among others. And these issues, which I've raised, are the issues of concern. And apart from other interventions by the Commission to curb the spread of this, and also as a deterrent to the occurrence of this. I'm talking about investigations, purpose of prosecution, and also the compliance and systems reviews that we carry out. We also have a step further, which involves the establishment of integrity, the committees, signing of integrity pledges, all in order to promote integrity within individuals and institutions. As the strategy again, to speak to the inner person, we've got these mechanisms in place and they've been deployed and the results are coming, but still corruption is happening. People are still committing acts of corruption, acts of misconduct. So now we took a step further to address some of these issues through speaking to an inner person, talking or addressing issues of integrity within an individual. That a person guided by the principle of integrity, then he might be able to police him or herself where there is no policeman or where there is no money. The principle of integrity will be able to guide you, and then you shun to do the wrong and you choose to do the right. And that resonates well with the refuse, reject, and report corruption as an individual who takes a decision to participate in the fight against corruption. And this affects the individuals within the sector, higher and tertiary education, the institutions themselves, also addressing those issues through participating in the establishment of integrity committees. Benefits of integrity to youth and the institutions in the higher and tertiary education sector. Integrity helps students develop a strong moral compass, self-discipline, and responsibility, leading to personal growth and development. Upholding integrity in academic pursuits fosters a culture of honesty, leading to authentic learning, better grades, and a stronger academic reputation. Integrity is a key characteristic of effective leaders. By cultivating integrity, students can develop leadership skills, inspiring others to follow their example. By demonstrating integrity, students can inspire their peers, creating a positive ripple effect that promotes a culture of integrity within institutions. Students who uphold integrity are better equipped to handle challenges, setbacks, and failures, developing resilience and adaptability in the process. Integrity promotes a sense of social responsibility, encouraging students to contribute positively to their communities, respect the rights of others, and promote social justice. And these benefits, not only by the youth, but also the institutions for the image and also for building a strong institution that can be able to detect and fight corruption within their spheres of influence. Integrity initiatives in higher and tertiary education. As the Commission, we are promoting mainstreaming of anti-corruption content in higher and tertiary education. This is being done through the public education and awareness units within the Department of Prevention of Corruption and Corporate Governance. The establishment of integrity committees in the higher and tertiary education sector. For this one, to date, within the sector, we have established it and capacitated 26 integrity committees. That is covering all the state universities and Also, the colleges, teachers' colleges, industrial colleges, polytechnics. So far, we've covered Manicaland, Masvingo, and Blawayo, Mat North, Mat South, and Blawayo Metropolitan. So we are left on the program, left with the Harare and Midlands. So the total of the integrity committees in this sector, we have got trained 26 integrity committees. An integrity committee is a committee appointed in an organization tasked with taking measures to prevent corruption within the organization's sphere of control. The integrity committee concept adopts a proactive rather than a reactive approach in dealing with corruption occurring within an institution. This is achieved by mainstreaming corruption prevention into the routine business of organizations. The rationale is to streamline corruption prevention best practices in liaison with the various departments and unions within the organization in order to instill good ethical practices in all employees and minimize the occurrence of corruption. So, for the statistics with respect to institutions covered, I mentioned that 26 integrated committees have been established in higher and tertiary education sectors. And also, for the category which involves primary and secondary education, we have established and trained 19 integrated committees, specifically belonging to United Methodist Church in Manicaland. All the 19 United Methodist schools in Manicaland have established their integrated committees, and we've already trained them, and their action plans, integrated action plans, are under review. These institutions underwent the corruption risk identification and assessment processes and managed to produce risk matrices and action plans, which are currently under review by the Commission. Right. Another initiative is the signing of integrity pledge. An integrity pledge is a social contract through which the participant announces or a commitment to act against corruption. A pledge is a commitment to act honestly and openly in all aspects to promote transparency, accountability, abiding by law, and ethical principles, amongst others. To facilitate the achievement of zero tolerance to corruption, integrity pledges have been seen as one of the key measures to fight corruption through promotion of high standards of ethical behavior and good corporate governance, as it heavily relies on voluntary individual votes. And on this one, again, we say integrity is the only currency which does not depreciate. It appreciates every day. And if we have people of integrity in the area of jurisdiction and to perform within the mandate of the institution, then definitely we are going to save on the little resources that we have, and that we always try and adequate. And by looking at the systems of the organization, then you identify the gaps that can give opportunity for more practices within the system. And then we try to close those gaps through putting mechanisms, internal controls, policies, procedures that can be followed by anyone who is a duty bearer in that office. And also add the principle of integrity within an individual who is entrusted to do the task. Then I think even the Auditor General, the observations and recommendations that she made every time, then you can agree with me that we will see reduction of those recurring issues on the action plan from the Auditor General's recommendations or nominee, or even the action plan that comes from Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission after carrying out the compliance spot check or a system start review. And also, when we identify them again, we refer them again to the integrity action plan of the institution, so that the integrity committee can now take care of those issues and make sure that have been implemented in agreement with the ZAC for the purpose of monitoring. This is the reason why we are reviewing each and every integrated action plan for the institution that we have trained the integrated committees. So the current statistics reveal that a total of 12,666 integrated pledges have been signed. This is cross-cutting all the individuals within all the sectors. But to be specific, we've got around 4,000 for integrated pledges signed by the schools. There was a program that we initiated early this year that targeted the schools within the district within Harare, that is Seke district, the Ashuri district, the Harare district, Wazana district, and the Epmafara district, where we advocate sending of integrated pledges by DSIO, district schools inspectors, the school heads, the education practitioners, SDC members, and the school head boy and the head for the learners. And with respect to the signing of integrated pledges, in 2020, Zimcot and ZAC partnered and crafted a total of 10 integrated pledges for different sectors at a workshop held in Kariba. And those 10 pledges were adopted by the National Steering Committee for the implementation of the National Anti-Corruption Strategy. And these pledges are the ones that are being signed by everyone. And they are tailor-made to suit the mandate of each and every tertiary institution or each and every institution. And also for the signing of integrated pledges, we have got a commitment from the government or from the executive, where we got a directive as at 10 September to have all the civil service-wide employees have signed the integrated pledges. And they also issued another directive early mid-November that by the end of December, we need to move up, especially on all the employees stationed at head offices in Harare. And then in 2025, we are now rolling it over to other provinces and districts for everyone to sign the integrated pledge. I think from the speech by Dr. Nyaude, representing the chairperson, he mentioned that we have got senior government officials signing the integrated pledges and also showing their seriousness in the implementation of signing of integrated pledges and the establishment of integrated pledges by institutions. So that as a country, we also improve on the rating under the corruption perception index as the initiative that the country is doing. And I'm also glad to announce that on the corporate pledge, where institutions are also pledged as an institution. So far, we've got two corporate pledges signed, one by Sinara and one by NetOne. And then their executives again signed the individual integrity pledges. And this is at the then building the integrity framework is a structured approach to promoting integrity and preventing corruption within organization. And the process involves leadership commitment. I've talked about leadership commitment in the respect of what we are doing in the initiative that we are currently implementing. Risk management, we are assisting the institutions to carry out the corruption risk assessment and then provide a mitigation and in time budget for the implementation expected to inadequate of the governance within the procedures always understand the policies and procedures. Training and awareness, promote culture of integrity, monitoring and evaluation, establish a reporting mechanism, respond to reports, among others. Then, in conclusion, higher education institutions need to invest in strengthening their integrated systems and in training programs. Leaders must demonstrate unwavering commitment to ethical principles through both words and actions. The key success lies in organizing and maintaining integrity. It's not a one-time effort, but a continuous journey requiring vigilance, commitment, and adaptation to new challenges as they emerge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maringire. Another round of applause, please, for Zach. So, very glad to hear that the challenges in the sector were recognized and a number of interventions have been crafted towards solving them, spearheaded by SAC. So, to move the program along, we just want to do a small panel discussion to reflect on what we've heard about the education sector. It won't take too long. I would like to invite to the front a couple of experts to just reflect on what we've heard so far on the education sector and the youth. First of all, Dr. Maling, if you can come up, and if we can get a representative from SAC. Then we've got an organization called the Female Students Network, again, who would welcome to the panel to just reflect very briefly on what has been presented in line with the theme for the Anti-Corruption Day today. So, on my left, ladies and gentlemen, I've got Dr. Wayne Maling, who, as I was saying earlier on, spearheaded the research for the TI on the higher tertiary education sector. To my left, I've got Ms. Sebanais Munando. She's the executive director of the Female Students Network, an organization that's doing a lot in the civic space around representing the interests of female students. And to my right, I've got Dr. Nyawido from SAC, heading the Research and Knowledge Management unit of the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission. Thank you very much for coming through. So I'm just gonna pose some questions for reflection, starting perhaps with you, Dr. Malinga. The research we've just seen on the screen, there's a whole menu of recommendations and quite a lot for different stakeholders. As someone who's done the research work, what do you think is the low-hanging fruit in terms of what is proposed? What would you really emphasize for the authorities to prioritize in the short to medium term in terms of what the research brought out?
Thank you so much for that particular question. I think in the research that we conducted, the low-hanging fruit has been on the concept of digitalization as a recommendation, where there is a need now to move from the way or the systems that we've adopted, especially in terms of how we conduct our business within the sector. The reason why we're talking about digitalization is because it limits human interference, especially when it comes to issues around the grading system. We've now got what we term e-grading. We can talk about academic records. We can talk about the admission process. We can talk about procurement. I think those are crucial entities or crucial components on how the higher and tertiary education sector should be run. So in all that we are doing, there is really a need to start thinking around digitalization. I think part of the key problems is because of the failure to actually adopt systems that are able to ensure that we've got limited human interference. Apart from that, the digitalization process can actually make it simpler, especially when we look at automated fee payments. We can also look at resource allocation. We can also look at online admission processes. We can even look at any other management systems within the sector that are quite crucial, especially on the daily running of different systems. I think it is quite important. Even this issue of digitalization can actually be implemented by different stakeholders from the ministry itself. We can also look at the private sector. We can look at any other stakeholders that are deeply involved, even our own institutions themselves, even the regulatory authorities themselves as well. I think it's quite important.
Thank you so much. To you, Evanice, you know, in Transparency International, we carry out research at global level on corruption. And one of the research products we release is what is called the Global Corruption Barometer. It's a worldwide survey to gauge what citizens are experiencing with bribery as they try to access service delivery. The 2019 edition in particular of the research on Africa was highlighting how many people in Africa now need to bribe to get essential services, even things they're entitled to, like identity and things like that. And the one thing which really sticks out for me from this research is the idea that 1 in 4 Africans is said to pay a bribe. But over and above that, young people in Africa are more likely to pay a bribe than their older counterparts. That doesn't resonate with what your constituency experiences. What is happening on the ground with the youth and corruption?
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, afternoon, everyone. I think I agree, I resonate very well with the finding from the Global Barometer that was carried out. What is happening amongst youth is also our constituents in the tertiary education sector. Yes, they are also paying bribes. I think it's the pressure that is also existing, the societal pressures that are there, especially when you're talking about the academic performances. There's pressure to also get high grades. So they also like kind of bribe the lecturers and also those who also do the supervision, especially the 4 ones that are almost finishing their academic careers. They also do that in a bid to really get higher grades. And also happening around accommodation, access to accommodation. I cannot overemphasize what has already been said. I think the researcher did a very splendid job to really highlight that even it's very simple issues like accessing accommodation. I know they also have digitalized, some state universities have also digitalized access to accommodation, but nevertheless, there's also internal weaknesses in terms of internal controls. Those who have applied online, you find out that other students who also get accommodation when they haven't applied online. So this is also presenting a problem amongst students who also become very desperate in getting accommodation at campus, where then they also result in accessing accommodation around locations that are nearby the campus, which is very expensive. I also speak around issues around leadership. This has been missed, I think, in the research to say amongst the students, because we also promote female student leadership in the Student Representative Council. We've also seen corruption happening among students in terms of acquiring a post. If you want to be voted to become the SRC president or a meaningful post in the SRC. So it's amongst the students now to say between male and female students, if you want to get to that position, you better exchange sexual favors so that you are also elevated and you also garner more force. It's something that is very disheartening. And also what we have discovered around students with disabilities, it's also said that the frontline helpers, those who are helping them to really speak out on the sextortion, for example, they are the ones who are negotiating even with the police, even with the institutions. They are bribed on behalf of the actual survivor. So it's something that is also very disheartening. And we cannot talk more about the lecturer-student relationship, where we are having our female students in a bid to get to pass. You also exchange sexual favors with the lecturer. If you refuse that favor, you are actually failed. And we've got cases where female students have taken longer to graduate trying to fight this extortion aspect where the lecturer is also involved. And another issue is around when you report sexual exploitation, be it at the institution, and when you are going through hearings, you are trying to seek justice. There's also corruption that is happening, and we are also asked to say, please withdraw the case. I'll give you so much. I think it was also online where we had another university where a lecturer was found wanting, and he also approached the parents to say, can your student withdraw the case so that at least I can pay you something. So it's something that's happening. It's very sad to say it's like it's a secret game that is happening, and nothing much is being done in terms of really mitigating that issue. And if we are talking about the grades, it's also the lecturer and the student. So there are no control mechanism to say really if the lecturer is saying I will fail you, there's no option there because there are issues around power dynamics, and especially when you're talking on female students, they are also like at the receiving end when it comes to sextortion, and there's nothing like in terms of policies that are there because it's happening even during, within the administration, among the students and the student lecturer, that is not being monitored by the institution. But we also want to applaud other universities and colleges who have also taken a step further by also doing result verification. If you want to enroll, they are also doing verification with what is this? The examination council. Yes, they also do verification, but you will really find out that the corruption is a threat. It can also happen there, even during the verification process. But yeah, it is much minimized in terms of really monitoring that. So that I can also say in terms of how our youth are facing now tertiary institutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was comprehensive. Turning over to you, Dr. Nyaude, what specific strategies do you implement as ZAC to engage youth in anti-corruption efforts? And how do you measure the effectiveness of these initiatives in fostering a culture of integrity among young people? Because we're hearing some disturbing feedback to say young people are probably part of the problem now. They are cutting corners.
Thank you very much. Congratulations for the launch of the research. As Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission, we have been having our strategy guided by the National Anti-Corruption Strategy, which now we can claim that within the various pillars that we are having, we made it sure that in the first pillar that talks about citizenship empowerment, for them to appreciate their roles, there were so many activities that were actually undertaken by that pillar, specifically the idea of engaging the church. As we are quite aware that studies have shown that in Zimbabwe, mostly around 85% are Christians in terms of research. And we targeted this through the various umbrella boards and at the National Anti-Corruption Steering Committee. I know that Dr. Bishop Chikuni was a representative of such a community. And this we've been able to get to schools as well, where we customized various programs. As you are aware, one of the philosophy the coaches in that particular pillar were using was the issue of saying there are three things the youth must be able to do. One of the things that they were looking at was the theme to say, let's cultivate some kind of a sense of duty and patriotism. Because if you embrace your country from the word of loving your country, from rhetoric to action, that is what we've been doing. At ZITF, we've used exhibitions. We've also been moving around in various schools, trying to ensure that we mainstream anti-corruption issues into the curriculum. And such engagements, I know there are so many assessments that can be made in terms of measurement. What we've been doing, we've been using the various monitoring and evaluation frameworks that we have in our commission, where we could go and do the posting, campaign, evaluation to see whether this has got impact. But sometimes one of the things that we've been facing when we are talking about measurement, we have also been using research to move around to ensure that we measure our impact. But of course, we are challenged by what we call exactly the short game approach, where people would say, by the time Zaki to eradicate corruption, I would have died. Such attitudes were the major constraints. And we are saying, no, let's lay the foundation today, the infinitive approach to fighting corruption. Those are different schools of thought that we have been having, but we appreciate this Public Service Commission. We have also been able to mainstream the manual, which is going to be used by the youth, and we are making sure that as people join the public service, they are going to actually be having such, integrity pledge at their disposal. And that manual, I also believe that Dr. Magiga was very instrumental in testing the manual at the ZIPAM there. So you find that for the fear of getting possessed, I think I should end here in the present.
Well, I'll induce you to be possessed further by asking you. We heard that ZAC is at a high level of engagement around the curriculum. That we want to see content on ethics in the education curriculum. I see an opportunity for you to appraise us on the state of play with that initiative.
Thank you very much. What we did, this is mainstreaming. You'd appreciate that the SIMSEC syllabus is loaded, and what we are trying to do is to ensure that pockets of the anti-corruption issues are incorporated. What has been done so far is groundwork and research. The public education spearheaded this, and they were able to go to the various provinces and engage the relevant ministries. And now it's at an advanced stage for fear of being misquoted, but it's at an advanced stage. And we anticipate that, and we'll continue to sing the chorus, ethics, upfront philosophy. Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to you, Evanice. In your earlier on submissions, you were mostly talking about the female students. But does it mean that young men are also not bearing the brand of corruption? Do people face the impacts of corruption the same? That's what I'm trying to get at. Surely there has to be some differentiated impacts.
Yeah, I think all students are also facing corruption because when you look at accommodation, it does not discriminate in terms of sex. Every student wants to have access to the university accommodation because it's slightly cheaper. But I think where it happening most is the female students, because when you talk about sextortion, it's an exchange of sexual favors against essential services. So yes, male students are also facing that. When you're talking about the academic successes, where they also want to pass and they also want to achieve higher grades. So it's not discriminating that only female students are suffering, but when you're talking about sextortion, it's purely female students, but also male students are also part of the game. And I also spoke about leadership. Mainly the female students are suffering at the end of male students, because if you want to get to a higher position, it's those males who say, if you want us to vote for you, and also mobilize more people to vote for you, they are also involved in such. But I cannot rule out that all students, they are also suffering. And when we talk about higher fees, for example, because the institutions, they are very different, and we deal with both state and private universities and tertiary institutions. When you're looking at school fees, and some of the friendly to our students, hence everyone is affected, because when you want now to really get that fees subsidized, the male students and the female students are also part and parcel. So everyone is suffering corruption, and but we would want to ask a question: who are the instigators? I wanted to also respond to our ZAC representative here, because I think we are also missing a point. Who instigates corruption, especially when you're talking about wanting an essential service? Who also admitting to say, give me some money. If you want to pass, give me some money. So who is also instigating that corruption among citizens within the tertiary institutions? Something that we can also explore further to say what mechanisms can be put in place so that we shun away corruption on both students and lecturers and also administrators. Thank you.
Yes. This year's commemoration says uniting with the youth
against corruption, shaping towards integrity. We heard from SAC what is being done to shape tomorrow's integrity in terms of the curriculum and so forth. But uniting with youth against corruption, to me, sounds like we need to be doing something in solidarity with the youth. What should stakeholders do to assist the youth to deal with the challenges of corruption?
I think we should keep on conscientizing the youth on the impact, the negative impact corruption is causing, because I think most of these youth, they lack knowledge, especially because what is happening is through pressure, and they haven't been deliberate or intentional programs within the tertiary institutions where we speak highly about corruption. So we need to join forces, and I would want to agree with the previous speaker that even at this platform, there are no youth who are also present to hear about these issues that we are discussing. So we need to include them. And also across the board, even youth with disabilities, they need to be exposed to knowledge and also make deliberate efforts, especially when you are doing orientations in our tertiary institutions. That should also deliberate to encompass education around corruption and also its repercussions. They can also tighten their mechanisms, especially on policy issues. I know policies could be there, but the implementation is also increasing. But how can you also strengthen these mechanisms by also involving students to also participate in the coming up with the policies? Because if we leave them behind, we are not doing justice to them. Hence, we also need to have their thoughts and also have their views when they are coming up with institutional mechanisms so that they are able to really participate and respond adequately. Thank you.
Yes, and furthering this idea of teaming up and assisting each other, Dr. Malinga, what sort of partnerships do you think would be the most effective in addressing corruption in education-based institutions? Do you foresee public-private partnerships, student-led initiatives, civil society organizations, academics who really should be taking the lead? What is the shape of these interventions that will yield the best results?
Thank you so much. I think that would really need a combination of different stakeholders. For example, if you look at the public-private partnerships, there is a lot that they can bring on board, especially in terms of leveraging on technology and expertise, and also maybe also the component of accountability that can be done through shared governance. The triple Ps as well can come in, especially in terms of resource mobilization, as we know that our institutions are really faced with challenges when it comes to the availability of resources. And also there is the element of scalability and sustainability. I think it's also quite crucial, especially when it comes to what can be done to ensure that we have a sustainable environment, especially in terms of the operations of some of these institutions. And the civil society also really plays a key role, especially in terms of ensuring that it does try to implement the check and balances in terms of the implementation of policies that are related to the operationalization of the HTE institutions. And at the same time, we also need not to forget the major stakeholders who are the students in this instance. There's really a need to desist from the Eiffel Tower approach, where problems of students are discussed at the higher level, forgetting to include them. So I think it's also quite crucial that they get an opportunity to be able to be on the table and also be able to discuss their challenges and also problems. And at the same time, I think what is also imperative is the issue of policies, the implementation of policies. Remember, policies are supposed to respond to a certain problem. And in this instance, if we have got policies that respond to some of the challenges being faced in the HT institution, there's also a need to ensure that we've got implementation mechanisms. We've also need to ensure that we've got tracking mechanisms in order to try and find out what are some of the key challenges in relation to certain policies that exist. And as the world is evolving on a daily basis, so should our policies. There's also a need to have a regular consultation process or consultative process that is done to ensure that our policies are able to respond to the current challenges. For example, this is just an example. The higher and tertiary education, when it comes to the quality of education, is faced by AI as a major challenge. So really, there's now a need to have policies that would also incorporate the use of AI and at the same time also try to ensure that it does good more than harm. So this is just a general example of how the world is evolving on a daily basis and also how our policies as well are supposed to evolve.
Thank you. So very quickly, just to close off this segment of the program, a question to all panelists. Noting the theme of this year's commemorations of the Global Anti-Corruption Day, what is your single-minded message to the youth regarding corruption?
Thank you very much. I think going by what Chirambira echoed, say when you talk about integrity, it's not inherited, but it is modeled. So our message to them is that let's ensure that we deal and interact with the good models. And exactly, we appreciate that the youth are there, but what we need, they should ensure they embrace technology. They also embrace issues around knowledge to appreciate, so that they should stand up and be actively involved and speak up against all forms of corruption and shun it in all its forms. Thank you.
Okay, I would want to urge the youth that they should also strive to work hard, especially when acquiring marks, because it's a trade that is going to haunt them for the rest of their lives. Because you can acquire a degree right now, a fake degree, but you will not also produce when you go to the industry. And also, let's apply transformative approaches where we are going to deal with the self, because we cannot deal with corruption without transforming the self. That will also able to transform the institution, the structures, and the system. So I really encourage them that let's desist from embarking on corrupt activities that you can haunt us for the rest of our lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think from my end, let's take the youths to universities. Let's take them to colleges. Because there is a difference between their realities and also what is being perpetuated, especially when it comes to how education is now being viewed. So there's a need to take them back to class so that at least we can be able to have a better society of learned people who can be able to make crucial decisions. And at the same time, we do have a youth bulge. And part of the youth bulge that we have, we're losing it to brain drain. So there's still a lot that also needs to be done. And also we need to deal with the rising inequality that is increasing on a daily basis, and the most affected are the youths. There's also a need to address that. And also the issue of disillusionment, whereby a lot of youths are now demoralized. There's also a need for us to go back to the drawing board and ensure that we're able to motivate them so that at least they can be able to get into these institutions and access the education that they need. At the end of the day, the youth are the future, and so we need to support them by all means possible.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I think your comments have been insightful. Ladies and gentlemen, please give them a round of applause. Thank you very much. Yes, so I would like to hand over the next segment of the program to Zimcod. They've lined up a number of activities for us. They've got a research that they'd like to share with us. They did a baseline survey on the knowledge and attitudes of the youth in Zimbabwe to corruption. Very, very important, I think, if we want to tackle the problem from a data-driven perspective. And then they've also got some artistic expressions to also give us a lens into what is happening with corruption in the youth. I believe I'm handing this over to you, Mr. Nimrod Nyamuchikano. Please come over to the podium. And let's give him some applause.
Afternoon. All protocol observed. I'm here to present on some of the findings that Zimcod and its consortium members managed to come up with when they did a number of baseline surveys for some of the projects that they are conducting. One of the baseline survey was on the gaps and opportunity for youth participation in accountability and decision-making processes in Zimbabwe. I think you can all see that the surveys that quickly aligns with one of the themes that we are looking on today. And the other one, just after and realizing and noticing the findings on the gaps and the opportunities that young people can have in terms of participation in key governance processes. ZimCode was pushed to go forward and look into something which is mostly related to that, which is a survey on knowledge, attitude, perception about corruption among Zimbabwean youths. The key objectives of all these surveys that we conducted were mainly focused on coming up with a comprehensive analysis of the knowledge and perception that the youth have when it comes to issues to do with corruption. And another one was to also now look at a different angle, which is to assess the level of accountability and responsiveness of the subnational institutions that are there. And finally, it was to assess the strength and systems and mechanisms that support anti-corruption in terms of having youth to come into the anti-corruption programming level. The key questions that we have been asking, I think these were some of the key questions that the panel have been addressing here. And I think also, from what I've been hearing, most of the findings that I've got so far, they are aligning closely to some of the findings that we are having. And I think something that we really need to be looking into is that when now the youth are faced with this problem, this dilemma, what should we do? How can we now come up with channels to ensure that youth are abided by the integrity behavior? So most of the questions we're looking into currently looking into the knowledge levels of youth in terms of corruption, one, and also looking into the mechanisms that are in place that the youth are aware of, that they can contribute to the anti-corruption programming in all relations. So we're trying to look into it at all angles, from the angles of their knowledge and their perception, their attitude, and also the level, which is a participative and also in a collaborative role of the subnational institutions that are there to support efforts by the youth by integrity. So the key findings that we had, one looking into the assessment that we have, is that the youth are well versed. They know about corruption. The youths are well versed when it comes to types of corruption that you might think of, when it comes to ways, avenues of corruption that are in country. The youth are well versed, and also a surprising factor is that the youth are also aware of the detriments, they are aware of the impact of corruption to the livelihood, to development at a larger scale. But here comes the question: what are the youth doing in terms of coming up with strategies to mitigate such corruption activities? The questions that were being posed, that the youth are now cutting corners. The youth are now seeing corruption as a livelihood mechanism. And I think there is need to come up with a really strong mechanism to ensure that they are guided by integrity issues. Statements, the lingos like drinking, they are not well versed with that. And they are not, if you are talking about how to get employed, they can tell you that you only get employed if you know someone. So the thinking of corruption, that corruption is going to go away, that integrity is going to be the new norm, the youth are quietly opposed to that factor, because now they think a livelihood mechanism that they should have is for them to engage in corrupt mechanism. If you want to be in the transport system, if you want to be a vendor, if you want to do this, you need to have something that will make you align to the livelihood, to the new livelihood norm, which is corruption. So that's the challenge that is there. They are well versed, they know, they have knowledge, but the attitude and perception on that, there is something that we need to be working on that. Some of the barriers that they are facing in terms of them probably participating in anti-corruption programming. They say some of us we have limited capacity and skills. They say we have institutional barriers. There are institutional barriers that are there. They say we have limited information because when they were asked for a mechanism that they can have, for example, to report corruption, to do this, and to work closely aligned to anti-corruption strategies and mechanisms that are being put in place, only a few could elaborate on ways that they can utilize. So these are some of the areas that they were saying, we really need to participate in this. And something that we really need to take cognizance of is lack of opportunities. They are saying we don't have opportunities in which we can clearly outline some of the corruption activities that we are noticing in our communities, so that we can create a shift in the policy, in the way things are being done. So this is one of the areas that we think we really need to be looking into as we do our anti-corruption programming in all the interventions that we are faced with. We can go to the next slide. So this closely related to the slide that I've been talking about on the factors that are affecting. Now we have to delve a bit better, a bit deeper into looking into the factors that only affect the women, the young women, into issues to do with participating in governance processes. These were some of the areas that they were talking about: inclusive policies and legal framework. They were talking about lack of knowledge and awareness, limited access to educational resources, political environment, and the fear when it comes to reporting this. I think I will tie this to one of the findings that we had when we are dealing with the recommendation. So we then needed to look into to assess the level of our sub-national institutions in terms of coming up with anti-corruption strategies. Yes, a lot of things are being done. Policies coming into play, interventions, and all that. But the challenge now is that there is no proper reinforcement in terms of the sub-national institution to come down to the youth and also work with them when it comes to issues to do with anti-corruption. These were the findings that youth were saying. We know that there are some of the anti-corruption activities that are happening, but to say we are being involved, we are participating equally is an issue. And they were saying we really need to help to ensure that it's enforced at the sub-national institution, so that we can work with them to come up with a community that abides by good ethics. So let me just rush to the recommendations for all the areas that we're looking into. One of the main recommendations that came into play was to mainstream corruption in school curricula at the secondary school and even in the primary school. They were saying we need, now that we are faced with this pandemic of corruption, and it's a behavioral thing that we really need to tackle. Well, now we need it to be pushed and to be pushed into the education curriculum system, where people are capacitated, the learners are capacitated on how to abide with integrity, and also on how to shun away corruption. And the youth were reinforcing the fact that they need that whistleblower protection, the framework. They were saying we are totally afraid to participate because we are the fear of that post. After we report and we do that, we are afraid that we might be victimized. These are some of the concerns that were coming from the youth. And also, there was need for advocacy. We suggested that there is need for advocacy and social marketing of anti-corruption institutions. A lot is being done. We have heard the presentations here. A lot is being done, but we need it to be marketed so that our youth know, actually are well capacitated on what the institutions that works on anti-corruption are doing, so that they can support and also they can be of the same view with them. And there's need to empower the traditional structures in this is a development of fraternity. if the traditional structures are not involved in the anti-corruption programming, we might be fighting from the losing end. This was some of the recommendation that came into play. And there is need to establish localized anti-corruption structures. And also there is need to strengthen the community-based training initiatives when it comes to issues to do with corruption. Then we had to look into the need also to leverage on technology, e-governance, because the youth were so much keen to know of the confidentiality that is there on the current and existing reporting mechanisms. So this is one of the areas that they wanted to look into. I talked about corruption being the new norm or the livelihood mechanisms for the youth, like they were saying. They also talked about now that you are working on this, please come up with strategies to address some social economic root factors that we feel that is propagating us, is pushing us to participate in such corrupt activities. Lastly, we had to look like we were looking at participation of young people in key governance processes. We had also to look into participation of young. How can we enhance participation of young people in governance processes? And these were some of the recommendations that we had. That we need to ensure that we reform the junior council selection processes for transparency and community involvement. Establishment of clear legal framework for junior councils, and there is need to introduce youth coaches in local government, and there is need to appoint dedicated youth focal persons within local council, and there is need again to establish what we call a shadow youth council to influence council's decisions, and there is need again to ensure that we create a youth friendly local government branches to encourage youth participation. Ladies and gentlemen, these were some of the recommendations and these were some of the findings that we were able to establish from the two surveys that we conducted. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's a saying that goes, art imitates life. And what better way to get deeper understanding of the lived experiences of people with corruption in this country than to have a play? Zimcod has put together a short presentation so that we can understand what the youth are experiencing with corruption. So I'm handing over the floor to Taurai. If your group can please take the stage and make your presentation. We're calling up the actors to the stage.
and celebrate the official opening of the new public toilet for everyone. That is going to be- So, everyone is happy for it's final. We are now going to officially open new public toilet. So, let us welcome the toilet cleaner to give us the demonstration. This is a public toilet for everyone from all walks of life. Gone shall be the days of bush toilets. As we are going to have a systematic toilet in which people will be able to dispose of their waste in an orderly and safe manner. I profoundly believe that a public toilet is a basic human right, as I commit myself to keeping it clean so that it's safe in public. In officially opening this public toilet, I believe it is free for all because we reached here after a protracted struggle with With these few remarks, I therefore declare this public toilet officially open. Utilize the toilet. Modern toilet. Wafumira ku toilet ndiani? Wafumira ku toilet ndiani? Why na Here down the line, the toilet is no longer as clean as it used to be. And it is no longer freely accessible to everyone. Now accessible to, I don't know, maybe the cronies of the toilet cleaner or those who can pay to get into it. Now, this is official. The toilet is out of order because you people have been depositing waste on top of waste, resulting in a condition that needs extra effort to clean. But any serious gents can access the ladies
And any serious lady can accept jealousy for a token of appreciation, paid toilet attendant. No chance.
This is supposed to be a public toilet for everyone. This corruption now is already as youth we are placed. But the time of materials, spectral party, for sumo.
But the whole you know. You but even. Katusina mare kubandala aumpinde matuzvitia.
No. Enough of this nonsense. You know how I'm over it. Guys, let's join hands. Fighting against corruption. Because we want to build tomorrow's integrity. Who is she?
Amupindi muna mai wangu. No toilet. Yes, it's all coming. Security, the public toilet. Yes, extremely violent. Cause malicious damage to property. It requires maximum urgent force. Yes.
We cannot tolerate corruption.
What is that?
Don't listen to this madman. He's a
You are an and you have the right to remain silent.
Not charge.
Huh?
You public.
Inciting public disorder plus what threat to security.
Compromising our basic human rights is building
Anunan item
And I'm here to approve. And I think everyone I can have and it could be Shaganaka. Ma.
People pay for the spending. Which is that. But this is what is the government and the president are directly not correction. So how do we get this correction?
Right, thank you very much. Can we give them another round of applause? Yeah, indeed, it takes very serious citizens to stop corrupt tendencies. It also takes all of us to have that courage and integrity to stop corruption. Thank you very much, Dakarai, for steering the ship this morning, and I'm taking over. I'm sure I will write on the protocols that have already been observed. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't mind, you can still clap hands for me, even if I have not done anything yet, so that I gain a bit of some confidence. But I know that the discussions that we are having today, they are very, very important. Very important discussions because we are talking about something that can push our country forward. Ending corruption for us is a must. We have to arrive at a point where Zimbabwe is the ranking low on whatever measurement that can be done to measure this country against corruption variables. So I'm happy that we are here. I'm happy that all stakeholders are here to discuss this issue. I have heard some panelists talking about the youth. And the theme of the of today's anti-corruption commemorations also resonates with issues around youth and the building of integrity for tomorrow. Today we have the youth. The youth are actually here that we are talking about. The youth that we want to make them be at the center of the anti-corruption fight. We actually have the youth. Is ZimCode and TIZ, we are implementing a lot of programs that targets youths in terms of them building integrity, in terms of them practicing, principles of integrity like honest, transparency, and accountability. These youths are organized from all the locations that we're working. Now we are working in almost 20 districts. Across the country, 6 provinces. We have what we call Youth for Integrity icon that we have. And these youths, when we started working with them, they made a commitment to say that we have chosen to be honest. We have chosen to have integrity. We have chosen to uphold the principles of integrity. And for us, as we commemorate this day, it's not about having 1,000 youth today to say that we no longer indulge in corruption or what. It's just having those 2 or 3 that have made a commitment. For us, there is hope in those 2 or those 3 or 5. So, as we try to mobilize more youth, we have what we call Youth for Integrity hubs that we have established across the districts that we are working in. The job for these guys is to just do peer-to-peer education about corruption, conscientizing fellow youths to uphold integrity and leave illicit deals. And if you check, as we go forward next year, starting January, we are instituting a campaign that is called I Got It Clean campaign, especially targeting the youth. What do we mean by I Got It Clean? We are saying youth, because you now have the power, social media, you now have a lot of platforms that you guys meet and discuss and mingle. What if, when you go to collect your driver's license to do your lessons and go to the VIT, for example, to acquire your license, what if you do it clean? You don't pay a bribe there. You get it without paying even anybody. After getting that, you go on social media, you post your driver's license, and you put the hashtag, I got it clean. Is that possible? Is that possible? We can start even as adults to get your services clean. And the moment you do that, that's the starting point of being honest to yourself. Because if you get it, you say, I got it clean when you didn't get it clean. Do you have integrity? Do you have integrity? So we trust those that are going to post following that hashtag next year. You are going to get your services clean. Even if you go to council to pay for your water, post your receipt and say, I got this receipt clean. I've not paid a bribe to stop people from closing water at my house. Right? This is clean. I paid for my services. So you want to run with that. With this youth, I'm happy that this time the theme resonates well with the young people. So without wasting my time, let me call those that have made a commitment. And I would like for you to clap hands for them, our integrity icons that have started the journey of becoming people of integrity. Can you please, guys, come forward and take this? Integrity icons. Yes. You can keep clapping for those that have made a commitment. And remember, integrity, like Dr. Nyaode said, it's not something that you can sit down in class and be taught about integrity. You just take that as a sacrifice. Because it's the same as opposing or going against the River Nile, if I'm not mistaken, River Nile, to say I want to live an honest life. Even if I go to get my license, if I get it at 2060 time, it's still okay. As long as I get it what? Clean. What kind of a commitment is that? Strong. Right? Right. Lady and gentlemen, I would like to ask you. I'll start with you, Lenny. What do you understand when you talk about integrity? How do you define integrity from a youth perspective, from where you are sitting? What is integrity?
Thank you very much, Tashinga, for that question. So for me, integrity is about a matter of having a strong personal value system that you won't be able to break yourself, even if no one is seeing you. So for me, that is integrity.
What are you doing as an integrity icon to mobilize other fellow youths where you stay? Where you come from? Where?
All right. Thank you very much. So I come from Epworth, born and bred in Epworth. So in Epworth, in terms of trying to build integrity, the first thing that we are doing, that was a finding of the baselines that were being presented. We noted that young people do not have the knowledge that is required, and also it was noted even the NDS1 that young people do not have the principles of honest hard work. So the first thing that we are doing, we train young people on how they can, integrate icons. Number one. Number two, we then conscientize them about local governance processes and how can they engage with the local governance institutions and all subnational institutions towards promotion of public accountability and integrity.
Thank you very much. I'll come to you, gentlemen. The types of corruption is used that you are encountering. You stay in Tungwiza, I guess. When you're in Tungwiza, which corruption types that you are encountering, and how are you responding to them as an integrity icon?
Okay, thank you. Afternoon. I'll touch on the major one, which is bribery. There is serious bribery in Chitungwiza. In local governance, I will touch maybe with the municipality. People, they don't have information. They do not know which offices can I visit to get certain services. Which authority should I approach to get this service without giving bribery to a certain individual or to a certain class of office. So the major problem is people do not understand the processes that are being done. As for what we are doing, we are giving the youths information. I believe you have to understand that this initiative is not a marathon. It's not a sprint, sorry. It's a marathon. It's a long process. So we are still in the process to recruit other youths. We are using the mode of technology to inform youths. We gather, we teach each other means where we get information, relevant information and relevant resources to relevant offices. Thank you.
These are our youths, ladies and gentlemen. They are taking a commitment. Why not us, as adults, also taking the same initiative? I go to church, and you can see old men coming to church and receiving Christ. Maybe after 78 years or 79 years of not going to church, it's still acceptable to change, even if you are an old person. It's not about the young people. It's also about us as adults. And saying, from today, I will not bribe. From today, I will go to look for an ECT place at my local school and not bribe. I will get that place clean. How many are going to do that? To make that commitment? One. You've got integrity, my brother. Only one. Well, you've got hands up. So let's ask everyone, right? Every one of us is going to do that. Let's clap hands for ourselves. I'll come to you, my brother. As a youth, what do you think other fellow youths should do? Whether youths in the ghetto there who are doing nothing, whether youths in universities, to deal with these corruption issues that we have cited. They've talked about sextortion, bribery, embezzlement. What do you think we should do as youths?
Thank you so much. All protocols observed. Before I share my sentiments, I believe I have no monopoly of wisdom, but my sentiments should be taken into consideration. So the first port of call that the youth should do, I think, is the ability to acquire knowledge and wisdom. Because in my own analysis as an academia, I realize that the major concern that is facing the youth is mental poverty. Our minds are very empty to such an extent that we cannot be able to navigate the complexity of the realities in the world that we live. So the first port of call for youth and everyone is to acquire knowledge in these systematics and the policies. Then after that, we can be able to actually look at the problem, and above all, stemming from Professor Mpetzi's work, he talks about we cannot create a new wheel, but we have to actually work with the wheel that is already there. So we need to tap in those systems that are already there. We cannot remove the system, but we can only revolutionize and modernize the system which are as the youth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, my brother. I'll come to you, my sister, lastly. We have SAC, we have different government departments representing government, we have civil society. Now, we are talking about corruption. And from where you are sitting as an integrity icon, what are your recommendations to government, to all the stakeholders in here about fighting corruption?
Thank you so much for the question. I recommend to the government that they should protect whistleblowers and witnesses. These are very important people within our societies because we have people who are working in those places with people who are involved in corruption, but then they cannot go out and say it because probably they think that they might have freedom of expression, but maybe not freedom after they speak. So we need to make sure that the government protects those people so that they continue to raise awareness and name and shame the corrupt things that are being done. The second thing, I think the government should give opportunities to young people. We have a lot of young people who are into entrepreneurship, who are doing a lot of work out there, but they need that opportunity to also supply to bigger companies, to also supply even to the smaller companies within our economic sector. That way we have them also involved and not only the big guys and the big girls within the society. I think the government should also make sure that they improve the public finances in terms of expenditure. We have to make sure that the expenses are channeled to the rightful directions that they were sent to. So I think this will help the government and the nation in fighting corruption.
Thank you very much, our integrity icons. You can take your seats. We can give them a round of applause. These are the young people. They are putting their voice out today as we commemorate the International Anti-Corruption Day. It's not good for us to get out of this place without you saying something, and we have heard them. Another scholar defined integrity as some actions that you do with no one watching you. No one is watching you. What you do with no one watching. What are we doing when we are alone and no one is watching? What are we doing? So let's make sure that our actions correspond to whatever we believe and whatever we stand for. To proceed with the program, let me call upon SWAT, Sandra Matindere, to come and give us a presentation on exploring gender influences, perception and experiences, corruption, while highlighting women and youth specific roles and contributions in combating corruption within Zimbabwe. I'm just giving you 10 minutes.
Good afternoon, all protocols observed. My name is Sandra Matendere from Zimbabwe Women Against Corruption Trust, and I have prepared a presentation on the gender perspectives of corruption, efforts of women and youth in the fight against corruption in Zimbabwe. I feel that we have overemphasized about the challenges of corruption on women and youth. So in my presentation, I will focus more on what we have done and indicate other measures which can be adopted by young people and women in the fight against corruption. Corruption remains an obstacle to the achievement of sustainable development goals, and it leads to weak institutions and deprives the poor and vulnerable groups like women and youth and people living with disabilities from accessing basic services such as healthcare, education, water and sanitation, among other public services. At Zimbabwe Women Against Corruption Trust, we believe that fighting corruption is a precondition to achieve sustainable development goals. Women and youth in Zimbabwe have higher dreams and aspirations, but corruption continues to hinder progress and deprives them from getting job opportunities and realizing their dreams. The challenges are more devastating for young women as they experience corruption of sexual nature when seeking job opportunities, work-related learning, among other things. We heard from previous presentation how young women face sexual corruption in tertiary institutions. The nexus between gender and corruption is very, very complex. Men and women are affected by corruption differently. You agree with me that women are more affected by corruption due to their caregiving roles in their families. Women are generally regarded as caregivers in families, taking responsibilities to seek services such as water and sanitation, seeking health services, and seeking enrollment places for their children. So they have more chances to interact with service providers where corruption is more rampant. Section 56 of Zimbabwean Constitution speaks to gender equality and recognizes that men and women have the right to equal treatment, including the right to equal opportunities in political, economic, and cultural spheres. However, corruption continues to hinder efforts to achieve gender equality in Zimbabwe. Despite the progressive constitution we have in Zimbabwe, women still face challenges to get economic opportunities, access to land rights, and access to quality health care, including sexual and reproductive health care services and quality maternal care. Despite being affected by corruption, women and youth are less active in anti-corruption initiatives. We, however, appreciate some organizations that are empowering youth to engage in anti-corruption initiatives. As Zimbabwe Women Against Corruption Trust, we have created a platform for women and youth, especially young women, to share their experiences with corruption, offer referral pathways, and seeking ways to redress their concerns. We have partnered with students from tertiary institutions through the Girl Up initiative to raise awareness about gender impact of corruption in tertiary institutions. We believe public education and access to information is key to promote culture of integrity across all sectors. We have also managed to convene awareness campaigns on the impact of corruption on women and youth and vulnerable groups. And we also understand that some citizens are participating in fueling corruption through offering bribes to officials to speed up the process of getting services due to lack of patience. Hence, our approach is to then encourage them to do the right thing and stop tempting officials with offering bribes. At GLAP, we believe vulnerable groups such as women, youth, and PWDs can be key drivers of change through active participation in anti-corruption initiatives. We engage in social accountability initiatives where we empower women and youth to monitor the availability and accessibility of public services in their communities. We also empower them to participate in budget consultations so that they can be able to monitor the utilization of resources in their respective communities. This will foster the spirit of engagement between duty bearers and also the rights holders. Participatory citizens are very active and empowered to monitor the provision of services in their communities, and they are also likely to demand transparency and accountability in the distribution of resources at sub-national level. We believe the fight against corruption starts at personal level, therefore everyone has a role to play. Moreover, this day coincides with the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. As an organization working with women and young girls, we remain committed to fight all forms of gender-based violence against women and girls in Zimbabwe. We castigate all forms of corruption which may hinder victims of gender-based violence from accessing justice. We appreciate the work being done to assist victims and survivors of gender-based violence through victim-friendly units, one-stop centers, and safe shelters for gender-based violence survivors. We call for integrity among all stakeholders in the justice service delivery because victims and survivors of gender-based violence rely on you. Furthermore, we continue advocating for the enactment of whistleblower protection legislation in Zimbabwe to encourage victims of corruption to report without fear of retaliation. Other measures which can be adopted by women and youth, the first one is to use technology to expose corruption. Social media platforms or mobile applications can be applicable in terms of exposing corruption. We also encourage the youth and women to lead by example, demonstrating ethical behavior in their own lives and encouraging others to do the same. Women and youth can also form intergenerational partnerships to leverage each other's strengths and experiences in the fight against corruption. In conclusion, we encourage all citizens to play their part in ending corruption through making reports and refusing paying bribes. Together, we can win the fight against corruption. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sandra, for that information. Indeed, we need to join our hands and our forces together so that we fight against corruption, but not forgetting the fact that integrity building is also a very, very, very important issue to start with before we even start to think about fighting corruption. Because what I know is that if we fight corruption, it will fight back. It will fight back. And corruption has got its reach. Corruption has got everything at its disposal to fight back. So the first point of call before we even fight, let's build integrity. Let's be honest. Let's be accountable. Let's be transparent. Thank you very much. We have come to the end of our program. Let me call upon Transparency International, Simcourt, and Zach, who announced Zach at last, to give us your parting shots.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your attentive and active participation in today's program. And also thank you for your patience with some of the technological hiccups we've been having, but you've been wonderful in that respect. I want to take the opportunity to thank the Embassy of Sweden, who indeed have actually provided the resources for us to undertake the conference part of the segment. So sincere thanks, and thank you very much for all the assistance in enabling us to do what we do. Possibly the last thing I'll say today before we go to the roadshow. Earlier on, we were talking about the education sector. We are very passionate about the education sector. And we've also heard about integrity pledges, which Zach is rolling out. An integrity pledge is a formal commitment made by individuals or organizations to uphold ethical standards and resist corrupt practices. And these pledges are often part of a broader anti-corruption initiative. Earlier on, we were hearing that it's about dealing with the individual. So in the spirit of those pledges, we wish to commemorate this year's Anti-Corruption Day with a symbolic pledge to support integrity in the education sector. It's part of the recommendations which came out of the research which was presented today. So when you walk outside, you're going to see a canvas banner. We encourage you to sign on your support to this campaign for education sector integrity. Please take a selfie and retweet on your socials to show that you also support the cause of an education sector that is free of corruption. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dagarai. Can I please call upon Mr. John Maketo, the Executive Director for Simcourt, to give us the parting shots? Over to you, sir. Okay. So thank you very much. He said I should do them. Thank you very much, gentlemen and gentle ladies, for coming to celebrate the day and to commemorate this very important and big event. Many thanks to our funders, USID, for also making this day progressive and this day a success. Whenever we do these projects and programs, we find support. especially from ZAC and other stakeholders and all of you to come and do this together with us as we build our Zimbabwe, as we build our nation. Without wasting much time, we have a road show that we are set to do starting from now, which is going to take the form of a moving van, where we are going to celebrate the day and commemorate this day again with our grassroots members of our communities. So it's going to start in Highfield, then via Glenora, then via Glenview. So we are going to be distributing our publicity materials about the day, conscientizing communities to build integrity, conscientizing communities to report corruption to ZAC, following up on those reports to see if the issues of the complaints are also being uptaken where they should be taken to. So lastly, let me call Mr. Magorimbo from ZAC to give us the closing remarks for this day. A round of applause as he comes forward. Another round of applause until he's. Thank you, Mr. Magorimbo.
A very good afternoon to you all. Allow me in this point in time to give the closing remarks for this successful event. As we conclude our program for the day, I would like to extend our heartfelt gratitude to all those who have made this event a resounding success. I would like to mention our esteemed guests from ministries, departments, and agencies, as well as the civil society, organizations, and development partners who dedicated their valuable time to join us today. Your presence underscores the collective commitment we share in uniting with the youth against corruption and shaping tomorrow's integrity. A special thank you goes to our speakers and panelists for their insightful contribution, which have inspired and engaged us in meaningful discussions about the pivotal role of the young people in our fight against corruption. Ladies and gentlemen, your expertise and passion are vital in guiding the conversation towards actionable solutions. Finally, I wish to thank everyone involved in the planning and execution of this event. Your hard work, dedication, and seamless coordination have brought our vision to life and fostered an environment of unity and purpose. Let us take the insights shared today and work collaboratively to empower our youth and strengthen our integrity frameworks. Together, we can foster a future free from corruption. Thank you once again for your participation and support. Twalomba.
Thank you very much, Mr. Magorimbo. We have come to the end of our workshop. Can you please clap hands for yourself for making a commitment to end corruption? I'm advised that we should have a group photo. So maybe our dignitaries, you can come forward, and others, we can join them, those that are willing to be in the group photo. But I know all of us want to be in the group photo. So I'll give the chance to our dignitaries first. Go in front. Then the camera people, you can ronga us so that we see where to stay. Let's come join the group photo. Yes. Honorable members of parliament that we have, can you please join? Ladies and gentlemen, may I please invite you for lunch? There will be someone at the door handing out lunch tickets. Thank you.